Year 11, we are looking at the Crucible, and we're looking at John Proctor's monologue today. So open your plays to page 97, right at the bottom, and we'll continue on 98. Right, just to set the scene here, and to start introducing some of the aspects of the rubric, we're looking at experiences and human experiences, and here we have the human experience of Proctor as he admits to his regret and his guilt over his adultery with Abigail. We also see the breaking down of his identity due to his reputation. So here he is going to admit to his adultery, which will mean that his name will be tarnished. And we'll unpack that in a little bit more. Now, a couple of things to be considering is the inconsistencies of John Proctor's character throughout the play. So one thing I'll suggest is that you go and, when you're writing an essay, it would be great for you to have an example from the beginning, the middle, and then the end of the play. And this is a great example to contrast John Proctor to something earlier in the play, particularly maybe his interaction with Abigail in Act 1. He still flirts with her then, so compare it to that, or compare it in Act 2 when he is talking to Elizabeth, and she is referring to the promise that she thinks that Proctor has made to Abigail, and that Abigail still thinks there's promise. She talks specifically about how John Proctor, about how he blushes in church and how that's a sign and a promise to Abigail that there's still something there, that there's still a relationship. And so that relates really well and contrasts here to the inconsistencies of his character, to initially him flirting still with Abigail and denying the promise to Elizabeth in Act 2, but now we see him admitting that there was a promise, and we'll go over that in a bit more detail. And then link that to the complete turnaround at the end of the play, where he's willing to die despite the fact that his reputation has been tarnished, and he's risking his life, but still that's just because he is showing how much he has changed. And so you can talk about those inconsistencies and how that sees a development as a result of his experience of guilt, and then that transformation when he admits to his guilt. Okay, so let's get into looking at this. All right. Danforth, it says, Proctor's just admitted that he has, that Abigail's a whore, and Danforth says, you'll prove this. This will not pass. Proctor, notice the stage directions here. They're all in italics, trembling, his life collapsing about him. Okay, I want you to think about that and analyze that, and why Arthur Miller has included that, and what it tells us about John Proctor's experience at this point of the play, of his experience of his reputation, and also his experience of guilt. So, you can quote stage directions, and that's something I want you to focus on and go away and unpack in your study notes. And here, when John Proctor says, I've known her, and repeats that, I've known her. Now, to us, contextually, that might not mean much, but if you are looking at back contextually when this was said, what it actually means is that John Proctor is admitting to having had sex with Abigail, to having had an adulterous relationship with her. So that's a heavy line there. I have known her, sir. It's not just saying that he knows her by name. It's saying that he knows her intimately. And then Danforth questions him. And Francis, the way that Arthur Miller has included Francis's response in the stage directions there, that he's horrified. He's horrified that John would admit this. John, you cannot say such a... He knows what this will do to John Proctor's relationship. But Proctor's response there is, I wish you had some evil in you that you might know me. So there, John really feeling guilty and feeling regret that he is admitting that he is an evil person, that there is evil in him because he has broken one of the commandments and has had an adulterous relationship. Now, Danforth's line is a really important line as well. So he says, a man will not cast away his good name. You surely know that. So there, that line admits the importance of reputation to identity. He's saying that a man wouldn't sacrifice his name unless there was good reason in it. And that's the truth of it. here that a man's reputation is really important to his identity and his sense of self and who he is in the community, to who he is in his relationships. Those are all really important things. Okay, now let's look at John Proctor's monologue here. And again, notice the stage directions in italics. Proctor, his voice about to break, and his shame great. So link that feeling of emotion of shame with the experience of guilt and regret. And that's one thing that you can explore here. In the proper place where my beasts are bedded. I want you to think about what language is used there. Is he literally referring to beasts? Does he have beasts? Or do they represent something else? And what do they represent? And why has Arthur Miller chosen to use that type of imagery? And remember, I want you to unpack the imagery, but I want you to be doing that. I want you to figure out what type of technique is used in that line, and have a think about what type of imagery it is. And then what's the effect of that? How does that link to the experience of guilt or regret? Or how does it link to the experience of reputation and identity? On the last night of my joy, some 8 months past, she used to serve in my house, sir. And then again, the stage directions. He has to clamp his jaw to keep him from weeping. Now, John Proctor doesn't strike us as a man who weeps, okay? But that is what the cost of his reputation is causing him to do. And the immense guilt that he feels is that he is inconsistently, and again, we're using that rubric term, this is inconsistent to his character, but he is starting to break down at this point. That's why this is such an important monologue in the play. And then he says, "A man may think God sleeps, but God sees everything, and I know it now." So there, that line, admitting to the omnipresence of God, links there to his shame and his guilt, that it is his feeling of regret, and that, as I said, emotion of shame linked to it, that he knows that he has committed this great sin, and he knows that God knows, and he regrets that. "I beg you, sir, I beg you, see her for what she is." And now here we see the purpose and the motivation behind why he is giving up his reputation. And that's so that Abigail's duplicity will be revealed, that people will see her for what she is. And then I want you to note my wife, my dear, good wife. Just the way that he could have just said my wife there, but why is there the repetition? And why add in dear and good? I want you to think back to the language that's used there, unpack that a little bit. And why would John Proctor say that? There's a clear contrast here between who he's talking about, what she is, and this girl, okay? What Abigail has become in terms of language. There's a real juxtaposition, and my dear good wife, okay? And so Proctor has learnt a lot, and he has learnt that he has seen Abigail for what she is now, and he is acknowledging that he needs to be loyal to his wife. So my dear wife took this girl soon after, sir, and put her on the high road, and being what she is, a lump of vanity, sir. And again, I just want you to notice the change in the way that he refers to Abigail, how that has deteriorated throughout the play. Initially, she's just a girl, and he sees her more innocently, but now we really see him change in the way that he speaks of her. And again, the stage directions, he's being overcome, and excellency, excellency, forgive me. Notice the pleading tone of his language in this monologue. Angrily against himself, he turns away from the governor for a moment, then as though to cry out in his only means of speech left. And now we have the admission, she thinks to dance with me on my wife's grave. That links back to the experience of the usurpation by political dexterity. Abigail has used her power of hysteria and fear to twist and manipulate all of the sequences of events that have happened in the play to this point. And this is her motivation behind that human experience, is that she wants to take the place of Goody Proctor. And Goody Proctor has been aware of this up until this point. She knows. But John Proctor hasn't been as obvious about it, but now he is admitting it, and he's trying to uncover that duplicity of Abigail. And well she might, for I thought of her softly. God help me, I lusted, and there is a promise in such sweat. And this is where I want you to go back to Elizabeth had a conversation with John about this, and John denied there being a promise to Elizabeth, to Abigail, sorry. But Elizabeth said that there was, when he blushed in church, that Abigail was clinging to a promise. But as we said, John was denying it at that stage. But now, look, here he comes to admit it, that there was a promise in such sweat, that he did give her something when they had the affair. But now he's saying it's a whore's vengeance and you must see it. I set myself entirely in your hands. You must see it now. So much happens in this monologue, and it's something that I just wanted to go over and give you a chance to look at in detail and unpack it. And as I said, I'll encourage you to go back into earlier sections of the play and compare them to this point, because that is really valuable when you're writing an essay and when you're looking at human experiences, to look at how the play shows the progression of human experiences. It doesn't just focus on one immediate hard and fast experience. It's more complicated than that. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks very much, Year 11.